We all know inflation is one of the biggest issues that the American economy is facing right now. And I'm sorry to tell you that it is going to get worse. In fact, a lot of businesses, especially small businesses, are warning right now that prices on everything are going to go up next year. And over the past couple of years, since inflation has been a major issue, I've definitely noticed prices kind of jump after the first of the year for basically everything. And if there's something that you've been thinking about buying that might be on sale during Black Friday or whatever, it's probably a good idea to pick it up before the first of the year, because chances are after that it will be more expensive. Many small businesses rely heavily actually on holiday sales in order to stay profitable, and some make up to 40 to 60% of their annual revenue in the last 3 months of the year. So this is like the crucial time of year for so many different businesses, and they kind of are in a situation where they're going to either make or break their year. These businesses spend all year planning inventory, budgeting, and preparing their products for the holiday rush that might not come. Because right now, people are just spending less money on everything, and rightfully so, because they just don't have it. 70% of consumers are actively searching for discounts and deals this holiday season. So if you are a retailer or a small business of any kind, it is in your best interest to offer the best deal of the year this holiday shopping season if you want to have any chance at all at scoring some sales, because people are looking for value more than ever right now. And if you don't have it, they're going to look elsewhere. The financial strain on the average American household is extremely high right now. And we have very low consumer sentiment, almost record low, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this video. And a lot of people are just shopping for more affordable treats, like things that are under $30 rather than large purchases. And this kind of shifting towards this small little treat economy where people are just looking for anything that they can get that feels like a win, and that's also affordable, and it's not going to break the bank. And by the way, today I am at Pelican Yacht Harbor here in Sausalito, and it is absolutely a beautiful day out here. And I'm so glad I'm getting another beautiful day to shoot here in California before I go back to Florida. The thing is, businesses are getting walloped right now, not just by lower consumer spending and people tightening up their wallets, but also because of the tariffs. Businesses are being hit very hard by these tariffs, depending on how much of your business is run on imports. And 46% of small businesses right now say that these tariff policies have negatively impacted them. And many of them are also absorbing these costs this year in order to avoid raising prices, but they're probably not going to be able to do that into 2026. So essentially, many businesses are absorbing as much of the tariffs as they can right now throughout the rest of this holiday shopping season in order to incentivize people to come in and spend. But once that's done, it's over, guys. Like, when you combine tariffs with the inflation that we've been having, it is a guarantee that pretty much everything is going to be more expensive in just about 2 months from now. Because a lot of these businesses have been struggling all year to try and keep their prices under wraps in order to keep their customers coming in, but they can only do it for so long. Business owners are running out of creative ideas in order to avoid raising prices on people. Some of the things that they've been doing since the tariffs were introduced is ordering inventory early, up to 18 months ahead of time in some cases. They've also been cutting costs through their operational efficiency or consolidating their warehouses. They've even been redesigning products to use cheaper materials. But a lot of them admit that 2025 will probably be the last year that they're going to be able to hold prices down. We've talked a lot about restaurant prices and food prices going up, and those increases are going to be permanent. And pretty much everything else that we buy is going to see a permanent price increase in just a couple of months as well. And this current economic downturn is really starting to hit small businesses pretty hard because 22% of small business owners say that the declining consumer financial health is their top concern right now. Because after all, if people don't have money, a lot of these small businesses are going to lose a sizable portion of their revenue and may have to fold up shop. People are just delaying purchases right now. They're buying less. They're just not buying things altogether. They're only spending on small items. And a lot of the big ticket purchases are just out of the question right now. Many small business owners say that they're essentially going to eat the increased costs that they're incurring through the end of December. But once the holiday season is over, prices will increase sharply. They use the word sharply in January of 2026. So I'm never the kind of person to tell you to just go out and buy stuff just to buy it. But if there are things that you've been kind of procrastinating to buy, especially more expensive items, it probably makes sense to go and buy it now before the end of the year. Take advantage of the holiday sales and just buy it. Not if you can't afford it, not if you're going to have to go into massive debt in order to do it, but if it was something you were going to buy anyways, go for it. They've been predicting that this holiday season is going to be a good one when it comes to shopping. They're predicting another record holiday shopping season, but who knows, guys? Like, with the way things are right now, it could kind of go either way. People might hear messages like this and go out and spend more, and that could create that record season. Or other people just say, you know what, I don't care what's going on, I just don't have the cash. I don't care if it's gonna be more expensive because I don't have the money now. I'm not gonna have the money in 2 months from now. And the reason that we know this is because Americans' household debt just hit brand new record levels on pretty much all fronts. And I was expecting this to happen. I've been kind of watching these reports pretty closely over the past 2 years. I have been talking about every single time consumer debt levels, especially credit card debt, hits new record highs, because it's important to pay attention to. It shows us what people are experiencing right now and what's happening in the real economy. But Americans' household debt, which includes mortgages, car loans, credit cards, and student loans, are all now at new record highs. I mean, how is that a good thing? I mean, it's a good thing in terms of like GDP and expanding the economy. That's probably why those numbers still look pretty healthy, right? But it's really bad news for people who are actually taking this debt on, because it means that their ship is sinking. Unlike these boats that are sitting here floating just fine, a lot of people's boats have a hole or two in it and are on their way down to the bottom of the ocean. Total household debt reached 18.59 trillion from July through September of this year, which is up by 197 billion from the previous quarter. And overall debt levels are up by 4.4 trillion just since the end of 2019, right before the pandemic. So think about that. People's personal debt levels have gone up almost $4.5 trillion in the past 6 years. That is wild. Student loan debt just hit a new record high at 1.65 trillion. And at the same time, a lot more borrowers are missing their payments, and nearly 10% of all student debt was reported at least 90 days delinquent or more. And chances are, if it's that late, those people probably are not going to be able to catch up and pay. Otherwise, they probably would have already, unless it's a strategic default and they're still hoping for some sort of student loan forgiveness. But regardless of what they're doing, this is a guarantee that their credit score is going to get hammered by missing these payments, because that's how it works now. There's actually real world consequences to not paying your bills, unlike what we saw during the pandemic. If you don't pay, it's going to go against you now. And you know, they're always looking for excuses and reasons why all this bad economic data really isn't this bad. Here's a funny one. This will get you laughing here. They say student loan delinquencies are at a record high, but auto loan and credit card delinquencies are not as high as they were in the middle of 2024. So, well, that's great. You know, things have improved and people are paying their bills at a slightly higher rate than they were a year ago, at least when it comes to those things. So nothing to worry about here. But the credit card balances, man, they just keep going up. And we know people are using that to survive right now, paying for things that they really can't afford, even just, you know, buying regular everyday survival essentials like groceries and household items, because Americans' outstanding credit card balances increased by another $24 billion to 1.23 trillion in the third quarter of this year. That's a new record high, and it's up over 6% compared to just 1 year ago. I mean, when you look at it just through that frame of mind right there, that the credit card debt, just one form of debt, forget about the mortgage debt, the auto loan debt, and even the student loan debt, forget about all of that, and just focus on the credit card debt and see that just that one is up 6% year over year. How many people got a 6% year over year raise in the last year? My guess is probably very few. And the ones who didn't are the ones who are responsible for this increase in the debt. Well, I hope you're enjoying this view, because for the rest of the video, you're pretty much just going to see beautiful views like this while hearing me talk, because I sort of messed up after I shot this. I forgot to change the zoom back to the wide angle, and it's just a big close-up on my face for the rest of the video. But the audio turned out good, and I have plenty of beautiful shots that I've taken along my trip here in California for you guys to enjoy along the way, and still have something pretty to look at while learning some pretty important information about our economy. And this obviously is leading to a situation where people just don't feel good about this economy anymore. The most recent consumer sentiment data came out, and it is not looking good. The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index fell to 50.3 in November, down from the prior month of 53.6. That's the lowest level since June of 2022, which was the lowest reading on record back then. All the economists predicted that it would only go from 53.6 down to 53. Instead, it went down 3 extra points. This is one of the largest declines in sentiment that we've seen in a while, with one exception, is people who actually have a very large portion of stock holdings. Because after all, since stock portfolios are still sitting near record highs right now, that's a pretty good position to be in if you have that. But not everybody's that lucky, because for the rest of the country, people are more and more concerned about their personal finances. There was also a drop in year ahead expected business conditions, and that goes back to the story we were talking about in the beginning, how so many small businesses are worried that people aren't going to be spending the money this holiday season. According to consumers' view about business conditions, that went down from 58.6 to 52.3 in just 1 month. And year ahead inflation expectations went up to 4.7% from the previous 4.6%. So people are increasingly more worried that they're not going to be able to find a job if they lose one. They're worried that inflation is going to continue going higher and higher into the next year, which so far, even according to the official data, that is happening. And they're extremely worried about this government shutdown, which is now the longest one we've ever had in American history and still showing no signs of letting up. So when you combine all these things, the horrible job market, inflation still raging, and a government shutdown, this is a recipe for disaster, guys. I mean, things haven't been looking good for a while now, but it's like this is kind of like the final nail in the coffin for the economy, probably. I'm not really sure how we're going to recover from this without having a major economic downturn, going into a big recession or even a depression. In fact, in my opinion, that's already started. We're already in the first couple innings of that depression right now. And I just think it's too late. It's too late for the Fed to do anything about this, whether they hike interest rates or keep lowering them. It's too late. It's not going to help anything at this point. Even if the government were to open back up next week, a lot of damage has already been done. A lot of people who have been furloughed and promised pay might not actually get pay. There's also a lot of government positions that might be eliminated when this shutdown is over. So many of those people who are directly employed by the government and are also affected by the shutdown are going broke now that they haven't been able to get paid for a little over a month. So where do you think this is headed? What can they do right now in order to just turn things around? I don't think there's anything that they can do. That's why I keep saying that the most practical solution is that they just let the economy work itself out. Let capitalism do its job. Let businesses fail if necessary. Let banks fail if necessary. That's something they refused to do in 2008, and they refused to do it in 2020 during the pandemic. And my guess is they'll probably refuse to do it again this time around, but it's going to be a huge mistake. America is no longer in the position to keep footing the bill for these giant economic mishaps. Now, the other day when I was talking about the job market, One of my viewers, Scott, wrote me an email talking about how his brother works for IBM and he actually dodged the layoffs this time around. However, he thinks he'll probably get canned sometime in 2026, the way things are looking right now. And basically the reason for all these layoffs is because their cloud hosting isn't doing very well. It's not profitable due to Amazon and Meta and a lot of other companies doing the same thing. Here's the important part of this story. This guy who works for IBM, probably it's a very good job. He is up to his eyeballs in credit card debt and personal loans, and he's planning to wrap them all up in an unsecured loan and then default because he's located in Texas, and that's a popular way to kind of get rid of all of your debt due to the debt collection laws over there. And I understand when people fall on hard times like this, they look for a way out that's going to cause them the least amount of economic harm. But it is the cheap way out, guys, and it ends up harming the rest of society in the end. So I don't condone this kind of behavior. I don't think it's a good thing that this guy's going to have a strategic default on all of his debt. But it might be the only way that he can survive getting laid off next year. And so people are going to do whatever they have to do in order to survive. And apparently IBM is just like most other companies right now, and they're moving as many of their jobs overseas as possible. So when you combine cheaper labor overseas along with AI being able to take over a lot of the lower and mid-level jobs, it's not looking good in the tech space. And I always like sharing viewer stories, and the reason I brought this one up is just basically to highlight that, yeah, a lot of people out there are struggling, even if they have a well-paying job. I'm sure, if you work for IBM, you're paid pretty well. And it sounds like it's another person who's probably a six-figure earner that is living paycheck to paycheck. Otherwise, he wouldn't be up to his eyeballs in debt, so to speak. Another email that was sent to me by Bill is talking about how he is concerned about the growing economic divide in America, where a lot of people are struggling financially, like we talk about every single week on this channel. But at the same time, a few of the wealthiest Americans grow wealthier and wealthier during this time. And he believes that this inequality is leading to a lot of the extremes we're seeing in society, like New York City electing a socialist mayor a couple days ago, as well as people becoming more and more frustrated with the current state of affairs. But I have to disagree with Bill, because one solution that Bill proposes to handle all the issues that we have right now, he suggests that we tax stock market gains as ordinary income instead of at the lower capital gains rate. He says this would make the system more fair by closing the loophole that allows wealthy executives to pay lower taxes on stock options than regular workers pay on their wages. And that contributes to a lot of resentment in society and a lot of the corporate behavior, like stock buybacks, and instead of the company reinvesting in itself. Now, on the surface, Bill has a point, because that would take away some of the resentment from people that just don't have the same means as people who are able to do this kind of stuff. However, taxing the rich has never worked, guys. Like, look where I'm at right now in California. California has the highest state income taxes of any other state in the country, yet it has some of the largest budget deficits, as well as the nation's largest homeless problem. And they collect more money than any other state. How in the world is that possible? Well, because when you tax the rich, the money goes to the government, who has been shown time and time again that they are not efficient at spending our money. In fact, it's quite the opposite. They are extremely wasteful. So while it would be a nice idea to level the playing field, so to speak, by taxing capital gains as ordinary income, it's not going to solve the systemic problems that we have. Because when rich people are taxed more, what do? Well, a lot of them own businesses, right? And so if they have to pay more in taxes, that means they're going to hire less people, kind of like what we're seeing right now. They're going to spend less money themselves, which makes the economy slow down even further. They're still going to be wealthy. They might have a smaller piece of their wealth now that they're getting taxed more, but all of the poor people or lower class people who would supposedly benefit from taxing the rich will actually be harmed by these higher taxes, because now you're trusting the government to do the right thing with the money and spend it in an efficient way that's actually going to help people. We don't have to just pick on California. We can look at our federal government and come to the same conclusion. Taxes in this country have never been higher, yet economic hardship has also never been higher than right now, except for maybe the Great Depression. But we're coming pretty close to being neck and neck with that time period as well. So I think it's a bit foolish to believe that raising taxes on wealthy people at this point is really going to solve anything. Wealthy people will figure out loopholes to avoid paying those taxes. They will move if necessary. And if they're stuck paying those taxes, you can pretty much guarantee that the government in charge of collecting them is not going to spend them in a way that's actually going to help the people who need it the most. And I'm not saying that as my opinion. I'm just saying that as an observation of the facts. You know, we can look at real life case studies like I just talked about, the US government here in California, and the way that the money is collected at record numbers and yet is wasted at record numbers. In fact, there was a story that was sent to me about a week ago. I haven't had a chance to really talk about it yet, but I'll bring it up briefly. And basically the summary is there were a couple of really rich people in the Los Angeles area that recently got sentenced to prison for embezzling a lot of the homeless money. Well, how did that happen? You know, that money gets collected in the form of different taxes and donations, of course, and somehow ended up in the hands of somebody who's supposed to do the right thing with the money and solve the homeless problem. But guess what? Homeless is a big business here in California and really everywhere now. And that's why the more money they throw at the problem, the bigger it gets. So my solution to kind of push back against what Bill said, and I still appreciate you sending this to me, Bill, but since we have different opinions, I just want to give my opinion of what should be done instead. I think that taxes across the board should be lowered so that way more people have more money to not only buy things in the economy and spend more, but there's going to be more of an incentive for small businesses to invest in their businesses and grow them, which creates jobs, as well as people having a big increase in confidence on the direction of the economy, because it will provide some much needed relief of people having more money directly in their pockets because they're not paying it in taxes. And most people are going to invest that money or spend it into the economy that ultimately makes things better. Versus the more you tax someone and the more money you take away from people, well, the less they have for investment and the less they're going to spend in the real world economy. But listen, guys, just because Bill and I have a different opinion doesn't mean I don't want to hear people's opinions on things. Now, there's a lot of people out there right now. You can even really point to politics being the number one place where you see this, where people don't want to hear anything that they don't agree with. You know, I'm always willing to listen to everything that people tell me. I might not agree with everything people tell me, but I still want to acknowledge it and, you know, talk about it and say what I think would be a better idea, rather than just say, oh no, you're stupid, this is a horrible idea, you know, how could you dare ever write something like this to me? Absolutely not. People who think like that are extremely closed-minded, and that's one of the biggest problems we have in society today, is people refusing to listen to someone else's opinion right now. Hence, the longest government shutdown in history happening right now. It's because one side doesn't want to listen to the other. Nobody wants to make a compromise. Nobody wants to hear what the other person has to say, and that has to stop. That's definitely something I want to reiterate on my channel time and time again, is just talk to your neighbors, guys. Forget about politics, forget about religion, forget about all of that stuff that might create a rift or a difference between people, and start looking at the things we have in common. After all, we're all Americans. A lot of people are struggling right now. People could use a friend, not another enemy. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.